Hello, ladies. Happy New Year. My God, I am so glad to be back. For my new subscribers here, welcome to my channel. So wonderful, and I'm wonderful, and I share tips on dressmaking and also show you how to make simple, beautiful, casual outfits. Now, for my older subscribers, I'm sure many of you already noticed my absence from here. Yes, it was unintentional. From nowhere, I had this terrible acne breakout, and I thought it was something that would just come and quickly go, but it wasn't bulging. So I was literally forced to take a break off here and just wait till it cleared out a bit. Anyway, thank God it's done that. I'm back now, better, and we're back to our regular schedule, new videos weekly by God's grace. And I thought, what better way to start this beautiful new year, okay, than with a simple casual outfit. That's if you're watching this in real time. And today we'll be learning how to make this simple collared rectangular dress. You can call it shirt dress if you want. And I know that for many of us, we're still in the holiday season, we're still eating, binging, drinking, and you know how it is with our stomachs. Yes, so I particularly love this outfit because it covers everything and it's still giving you that rich auntie vibes, you know, when you step out in style and all of that. Yes, so we'll be learning how to make this. You can use the same fabric, or you can just do like the plain and pattern like I did here with the collar, a different fabric. You get all of that shortly as we dive into the tutorial. Anyway, I have so much in store for you all, ladies, so please stick around in this channel. And for those of you who reached out to me, thank you. I'm better now, we're back here, and so much in store for every one of us. All right, and once again, if you find this video helpful, please do not forget to share to your fashionista friends and just, you know, share the good news to everyone. Anyway, let's get into the tutorial. So for this particular tutorial, these are the items we'll be needing. Fabric, I'm using my Ankara African print fabric. You can use this for your collar and your cuff, like I said earlier on, or you can decide to spice it up with another fabric, which is what I'm doing, using a plain fabric here. As you can see, you also need your cotton interface because I'm using cotton fabric just a little bit, and this is just for the collar. Okay, so you need your interfacing. You also need your pattern paper, just a bit. We'll be using this to draft out our collar, so not so much, just enough for the collar. And then the usual, your rotary cutter or your scissors, whichever one you use, your tape, your pins. You also be needing a ruler to use to draft your collar, okay, and your pencil and all of that. So once you have this, next step is to get our measurements, and then we continue. Now to calculate our yardage, that's how many yards of fabric we'll need. 2.5 yards of fabric is enough. It's a short dress and it's almost like a one size fits all. Okay, so you need about 2.5 yards of fabric because you need some for the facing and then the collar and the cuff, except you're using another fabric for your collar and cuff. So for me and for you as well, we'll be using the width of the Ankara fabric, if it's Ankara fabric, okay, as the shoulder part. So that means it's automatically calculated for you. As you can see, that's the width, which is about 45 inches. So half of it on one side, half of it on the other side, meaning that it will get to about our elbow area, and then the length will be above our knees. If you want yours longer, definitely then you'll be using the selvage part of your fabric as your shoulder. Okay, that's if you want a longer shoulder width, but I'm using the width of my fabric here, which is the 45-inch part, as the shoulder. So that's how we'll be folding to cut it and then measure our length afterwards. Okay, and then whatever is left of the 2.5 is what you use for your facing and the rest. Now the measurements we'll be needing for this is our bust measurement, we need our dress length measurement, and then we'll be needing our cuff measurement. So for the bust measurement, you just want to measure around the fullest part of your bust and have that measurement, okay, taken down. And then for your dress length, it's always advisable you get someone to measure this. So you want to start from your top neck here, okay, place your measuring tape there and then measure downwards. Now if you're taking this measurement by yourself, this is what I suggest you do. You just place your tape on the full part of your breast, okay, and then use your hand and just hold it there. If you look down while taking that measurement, you will mess up the figure. So look up, okay, and then you can place a mirror in front of you and just place your hand on that measuring tape there. Hold it, press it against your thighs, then you can look down. You can see that the tape does not move, and then you take the measurement you want. If you want it longer, mine, I want it short, so I'm using about 36 inches, okay, or you have someone take that measurement. Now for the cuff, this is where because I said I'm using the width of my Ankara here, which is usually by 45. So you can just take your own fabric and then just fold it into two so that you can get an accurate okay. So let me just fold mine into two, and then just from here, from the center of your neck, okay, you can place that just to have an idea where to stop. Okay, so you can see mine somewhere around here. So do yours, or measure the fabric and then measure it out on your body, and then take that round figure. Okay, just make sure it fits, not too tight, not too loose. All right, and then whatever that figure is, you have that taken down. So our bust, dress length, and then cuff, the shoulder is already automatic by the width of the fabric, so you don't need that. Okay, except you want to make yours longer, then you can take a custom shoulder length and all right, so let's get started. So now we have our fabric here. I have my folded. You can see the selvage by the side. So iron your fabric and fold it. You can see that it's folded. So that folded part is my top part. That's where my shoulder will be. I'm just going to mark this here so that I know that this is the wrong side of fabric. So what we want to do now is to measure our length and cut out. Okay, so make sure you fold yours in a way that you do not waste your fabric. All right, if your desired length is 37, you want to fold it about 37.5 or 38 inches. So from the top there, which is the folded part, we'll be measuring downwards to get our length. Whatever desired length you decide to use, that's what you'll be measuring and marking. Okay, and then after marking all the way across, you want to cut that out so that we have our cut out fabric. So now that we have this cut out, we'll be folding this once again, sides meeting sides, so that we can get our neckline and then shoulder slant. Okay, so once you have yours folded, next step is to go to the sides there where we have our selvage, and then we'll be measuring 1 inch downwards. We just want to give it some shoulder slant. Okay, so from the top of your fabric, measure 1 inch downwards. We'll be connecting this to our neck mark shortly. Okay, so once you have that mark, you get back to your center front or center back. All of them are folded the same way. Now for here, whatever your bust figure is, divide it by 12 and then add 1/4 of an inch to that figure. Okay, so whatever your bust figure is, divide by 12, add 1/4 of an inch. 1/4 of an inch is just to give it ease because there's no zip, so that it can enter our heads, you know, pass through our heads easily. Okay, so mark that figure, bust divided by 12 plus 1/4 of an inch. Now once you have that mark there, you want to get your long ruler so that we can connect both marks there. Rule it and then we'll cut it out. Okay, so just take your long ruler and then from your neck mark that you have there all the way downwards there, and then using your scissors or rotary cutter, you want to cut that slant out. Okay, so now that we're done with that, I'm just going to pin this area here so that the fabric does not shift. Next now is for us to get out our neckline. So first of all, we'll be cutting our back neckline on all folded fabric, and then we'll cut out the front after taking out the back. So this is the wrong side of my fabric. So from the top there, which is our shoulder line or top neck, we'll be measuring downwards 1 inch. Okay, to measure that 1 inch, that's the then you connect it to your neck mark there. That's for the back. So you can use your curved ruler or you can use freehand for this to draw the curve. When drawing the curve, ensure that the center back, as you can see, okay, has a straight line there, so that when you open it, it doesn't give you a distorted neckline. So you can just use your straight ruler to be sure that that center back as it is. Remember that this fabric is folded, so you have 4 pieces as it is there, both the front and the back. We're cutting out everything for now. Okay, so now that we have our back neckline there, we want to add 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So just measure 1/2 inch on top of that neckline mark that you have all the way upwards to the top line there. Okay, and then you cut out. So the back neckline is quite high. It's the front that will be definitely low because, like I said, there's no zip to be added. So once we have this, what I'm going to do now is to just slash, because you may or may not have a bit of still folded parts there. So I'm just going to slash through on the other folded part there, so that we can take out one piece for our back. So now it's obvious we've cut out our back. So I'm just going to remove all the pins that I put there, and then I'll take out the inner one. Since this is the wrong side of fabric here, I'll take out the inner one, and that will be the one that will be for the back. Okay, back of our outfit. So you can see how I've opened it up. So I'm just going to bring that out there, and then just take it out and keep it somewhere. Okay, so we're done with the back. So we still have to cut out the front neckline. So I'm just going to refold this properly, and then the front neckline, the neck length that we'll be using would be 4 inches. Okay, if you're chubby, you can use a bit more than 4.5, 4.75. If you're slimmer, you can use 3.5. A UK size 12, so I'm using 4 inches. So I'm marking that from the neckline mark we have, that the 1 inch neckline mark. So I marked 3 inches downwards because we've already cut out the length for the front, remember, for the back, remember. So don't forget. So I just measured 3 inches downwards and cut, and then I connected that to the neck width that we have on top there. Okay, you can use your ruler, you can use freehand. Once again, ensure that the center front as you have there has that straight line. Okay, and once you're done with this, what you want to do now is to measure and mark out your 1/2 inch sewing allowance all the way upwards. Once you're done with that, then you cut out. Now for the front, we're still going to do some bit of slashing. Okay, because if you just use only these two necklines, the front and the back, it will be very tight for you to wear. So it's like how one makes a kaftan. We're still going to slash it in the front from that neckline. So once you're done marking out your sewing allowance, you want to quickly cut that out, and then we'll be measuring about 4 inches to 4.5 for our slash. Okay, from that neckline all the way downwards. Now you don't want that to be too much, and you don't want it to be too little. Okay, so that it's not still tight when you're wearing your outfit. So 4 inches to 4.5 is fine. Like I said, if you're on the bigger side, you can make it 5 inches. If you're on the smaller side, you can make it 3.5 inches, or 3 inches if you're really slim. Okay, so once you measure that and you mark it, then you take your scissors and then you slash through to that mark. Okay, and then the next step now will be for us to get out our fabric so that we can draw our facing for it. Okay, so for the facing, it's not just going to be too much, so you want to iron that piece of fabric. I'll show you mine shortly. So get out your piece of fabric. It should be the same thing because the facing will be showing in the front when we are done attaching our collar. So make sure it's the same fabric you're using. So I have my fabric already folded underneath. You can see it. Center, front is on fold. Okay, so you want it to be long enough to extend beyond your slash line at the center front there. That's the facing fabric underneath. So have yours this way. Next thing we want to do is to cut out our neckline and then the shoulder line before we now properly measure and mark out the facing. So just cut out the neckline using your the neckline of the front fabric as the guide, because this facing is only for the front. We don't need any facing for the back. Okay, so once we're done with this, the next step now is for us to get the shape of the facing. Now remember that we have a slash on our front, so where that slash ends on your front fabric, you want to mark that same point on your facing fabric. Okay, so that we can slash our facing, because of course you need to have that slashed as well. So where you have that marked already, take your scissors and then slash through till you get to that point. Okay, you can also measure just to be sure that it's the same as the front using your measuring tape. So we slash through, and then after slashing through, you're going to measure on both sides on the shoulder part and the bottom part. Measure 2.5 inches. Okay, from that mark that you have there on the center front, measure 2.5 inches to give us the facing. Okay, and then you come to the shoulder, and from the neckline measure 2.5 inches. It can be more, it can be a bit less, but 2.5 is usually perfect because you'll be weaving the end of that, or serging the end of that facing. So 2.5 inches there, and then you just draw a curve, okay, to meet that there. You have different shapes of curve, but I just like to draw a round curve. No need beautifying it because it's a facing. It's not going to show on top of the fabric. Okay, so have that curve going round, and then once you're done with your curve, just like that, we can now cut out. After cutting out, we'll be adding our interface to it. Yes, we need that interface to give it structure so it stays flat underneath. Okay, so once you have this, next is to get out your interface, and then you're facing wrong sides, facing wrong side. Okay, and then you cover it up and cut. After we're done ironing the interface to it, that's when we'll be slashing using the fabric as a guide. So you want to cut this out. After cutting, take that to your ironing board and then iron it. Make sure you use a steam iron or you sprinkle water on it as you iron. Okay, attach the interface to it, and then afterwards trace where you have that slash and slash through. Do not slash beyond. Trim the edges, okay, everything around it, so that it's nice and looks neat. Okay, so now that we're done, next step is if you have a serger, you want to serge round the edges of the facing, or if you have a zigzag machine, you can add zigzag stitches around the edges. Okay, just the bottom part, that's all right. So once we're done with that, the next step now will be for us to get out our fabric so that we can add it to the center front of the main fabric. So now you put your facing to face your center front, wrong sides facing each other, and then right sides facing each other rather, and the wrong side outwards. So we'll be sewing using 1/4 inch round that slash, okay, and then up, all the way up. So I want to just quickly pin this side so that I can show you how I sew mine, so that it just gives it a nice look at the end. So at that point where you have your slash, you measure 1/4 inch downwards, okay, from the end of your slash there, 1/4 inch downwards, so that we can draw a curve at that point there, and it helps you when you're on your sewing machine and you're sewing. So 1/4 inch from the end of your slash downwards. So you can see how I'm marking mine, so you can see it. And then what you want to do is to measure 1/4 inch at the right side and left side of your slash. Okay, so you see how I've drawn a rectangle there, and then I now draw a curve at that point, so that when you're sewing from up downwards, when you get to that down part, you can see that mark that will guide you to sew a curve, not a sharp curve. Okay, just a normal curve there, and then you continue sewing your 1/4 inch using your seam guide on your sewing machine. Okay, so now let's head to the sewing machine and have this sewn. So after sewing, I like to sew that curved part once again, just to reinforce the stitches there. Okay, so you can have that done as well. Just quickly sew that part so that it doesn't rip off when you wear it again and again. So once done, flip it inside out, place it properly, iron it, and then the next step now will be for us to stitch the neckline and then the shoulder, okay, for the front, so that it stays in place, both the facing and the front fabric. So place them together like this, make sure that they match. You can have that pinned at the shoulder part, and then we'll be stitching, meaning just sewing loose stitches on the shoulder from where the facing starts, okay, all the way across to the beginning of the neckline, and then down the neckline curve. And then what you do for this one, you do for the other side of the front outfit, okay, the right side outfit. So you want to keep them firmly in place. Make sure you iron this so it stays in place. So now that we have this attached, you can see the shoulder and then the neckline. Next step we want to do is to just sew hem our facing to the front fabric so that it doesn't keep flapping. So you can do that in 3 places, okay, side and then the bottom center, or more than 3 places if you want. Make sure you use a matching thread so that it doesn't show at the front part of your fabric. And even when picking it, make sure that it's something little you're picking out from it, and then you just sew that twice on each side. And after sewing, knot your tie, or is it tie or not? Oh well, you get the point. And then after doing that, you cut it off, and then you repeat the same step for the other 2 places. This will just keep your facing firmly in place. Okay, so I'm done with this, and I'm going to do the other 2 off camera, and then we go to the next step, which is joining the shoulders together, both front and back fabric. So I'm done that, and do the other 2. Now that we are done with that, you want to get your back fabric, or back outfit rather, and then yeah, fabric piece, and then we'll add them together. Okay, so the way I like to add it is starting from the edge of the shoulder, or rather edge of the sleeve. Okay, pin that all the way till you get to the neckline. If you notice any form of excess in the neckline area, you can trim that so that it blends with where the neckline stops at the front fabric. So after pinning, you're going to be sewing this, that's attaching both front and back pieces together using 1/2 inch seam. Okay, so you can sew from the neckline all the way down to your cuff area at the end of the sleeve. And then of course you want to repeat the same step for the other second part. After sewing, spread them apart and then have that ironed. Okay, so after ironing, make sure when you iron towards your center front or towards your front fabric. Okay, that's the shoulder seams. Iron towards the front side of fabric. Okay, your front outfit rather. And then the next thing is to fold this, let the sides meet each other. What we want to do is to fold our center back and center front properly so that we can measure from center back to center front, or you measure from center front to center back. Okay, so make sure you have that folded properly. Okay, shoulder seams meeting each other. That's how you want to know that you're folding it correctly. All right, because any wrong figure, any wrong measurement here, your collar will not sit well. Okay, so once you do that, let's notch the center back so that it makes it easier when we want to fix in our collar. So just give it a little notch there at the center back. Make sure it has been folded equally. Okay, and then the next thing is for us to measure. Now when measuring, what I want you to, you can start with center front, no problem. I'm starting with the back. Okay, so you want to spread your neck. Don't fold on your table, okay, round like that. Hold it up and then stretch, not really stretch, but straighten your neck, area, straighten it, and that's how you measure. You keep straightening as you measure. Believe you me, I measured it round, feeling funky, when I was making it before, and the collar did not come out properly, gave me a wrong figure. So make sure that you are stretching. So I'm just pinning my center front because there's a whole lot going on there, the facing, the slashing, and all of that. So I'm making sure that they align, and then I'll just pin that so that it stays in place and I can measure in piece. Yeah, as I was saying, so you're going to I'm also pinning, okay, towards the shoulder area as well, just to give me peace and all of that. So now that I have that sorted, so I'll take my tape, measure from my center back. You can see how straight I'm holding it, and I'm straightening every part of the neckline as I measure. Okay, straightening it out till I get to the center front, and whatever that figure is, you want to note it down. You see, so straighten it this way when you're measuring. Don't measure it round. Okay, so whatever figure you have there, we'll be taking that to our paper, pattern paper, so that we can draft our collar. So get out your pattern paper and let's do that. So you can see my pattern paper is not so much, it's just enough, wide enough to accommodate the figure that I just measured on my outfit. So you want to fold your pattern paper, make sure it's on fold, please. Okay, and then I'm going to rule a straight line from the center back there all the way across. So you want to make sure that your line is straight, is not slanted. Okay, so I'm using my pattern ruler for this, and then I rule a straight line. Now after ruling the line, the next thing I want to do is to get our collar width. So for me, I'm going with 2.5 inches. You can make yours, the higher the number, the wider your collar. The lower the number, the smaller your collar. So 2.5 inches, just measure that across there, and then using your same ruler, you want to have that ruled across. Okay, and then once we rule that across, next thing we want to do is to come on our you can label that center back. Okay, and then come on our line below and then measure and mark out the figure that you got when measuring your center back to center front. Okay, so that's the figure that I'm measuring and marking on both lines, and then you want to use your ruler to connect both points together. And then from that point at the top line, you're going to measure 3/4 of an inch outwards. It can be more, it can be less. It just gives more shape to your collar. So I'm measuring 3/4 of an inch. Okay, and then on that point you want to measure 1/4 of an inch upwards. That's just to give it a little bit of curved look on the collar. Okay, so I'm using my curved pattern ruler to blend that from that top point where we measured our 1/4 of an inch down to almost like half of where the collar is. So you can see how I'm just drawing mine. So just blend that, use your curved ruler, and then from that point you want to draw that to meet the bottom line. Okay, and c'est fini. That's all for this collar. Really easy to make. Okay, so once you have this, what's next now is for us to add 1/2 inch seam allowance all around. Okay, so when you're done adding the seam allowance, 1/2 inch seam allowance, you cut out, and then we're good to go for the collar. Next is to cut out place it on our fabric and cut out. So now that we're done with this, remove your pins if you had yours pinned, and then we're going to be cutting out our interface. Now for the interface, it's just one piece you'll be cutting out. Okay, so get out your interface, place your pattern on it, and then you want to cut that out. And then after cutting out our interface, we're going to be trimming 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the interface. We're going to be trimming off, okay, so that it doesn't add bulk to our collar when we attach it to the collar and when we're done constructing the collar. So after cutting out the interface, trim off your 1/2 inch seam allowance all around it, and then once you're done with that, you want to place that on your one of the collar pieces you just cut out, just one of it, and then with the wrong sides facing each other, and then iron that. Once again, remember to use a steam iron or wet your fabric, the interface part, when ironing. Okay, so now that we're done ironing our interface, attaching it to one of the collar, what we want to do is measure 1/2 inch on that bottom part of the collar. Okay, not where you have the curve. So you want to measure 1/2 inch. After marking it, we'll be folding it inwards and then ironing. This is going to help and give you a stressless sewing when we get to the sewing part. So it's important to do this. It's not compulsory, but I would prefer you have that done. So just measure 1/2 inch all around just the bottom part that way, and then take that to the ironing board, fold that inwards, and then have that ironed. So now that we're done ironing that 1/2 inch part, the bottom part, get out your other collar and then place both each other, right sides facing each other. The other one, remember, does not have interface. So what we'll be doing now will be to sew from where we have that folded part all the way up across and then downwards to the end of that folded part there. Okay, so let's quickly just pin this so that it makes it easier when sewing. Now one thing I like to do is to measure and mark out the edges, okay, where that intersection will happen. So I'm just going to measure and mark out my 1/2 inch seam allowance. Remember, that's the seam allowance we left, or rather added to the pattern. So I mark that out there at that top part, and then across it where that curve is, I also mark 1/2 inch seam allowance, so that when I'm in the sewing machine sewing, I know exactly where to turn my machine needle and then continue sewing using my seam guide on my machine. Okay, it makes it really easy. So I'll do the same thing for the other part. Mark out ½ inch. It's just at that edge that you should mark out. Okay, and then mark out on the sides and then mark out on the top part as well, so that they intersect and it really makes it easy. So you can see my ½ inch seam allowance, so that you're not doing guesswork when you're in the sewing machine. So once we have that done, the next is to go to the sewing machine and we'll be sewing from one end of that folded part. Okay, and then that intersection, sew across and then sew all the way up to where that folded part ends, and then that's it. So let's have this done. And okay, another thing is you should notch your collar, okay, the part that is not folded. So fold that equally and then just clip that part there at the center back. It will serve us as a guide later on when we're attaching this to the outfit. So let's have this sewn. So after sewing, the next step now, this is how it looks really good, is to trim off the edges, okay, to reduce bulk. So we'll be trimming off the sides, the top part. When I mean top part, the part that has a sewn seam, and then the other side, the open part, which is the bottom part with the folded ½ inch. Please do not touch that area. We'll be attaching that to the neck of our outfit, okay? Just trim the top and then the two sides. And then after trimming, what I like to do is to just fold the edges at the tip, okay, so that when I'm turning it inside out, it gives me that pointed look or pointed edge. And if it doesn't bring out that pointed edge, you can use a sharp object, not too sharp, to bring that out. I sometimes use my seam ripper and get that pointed part out, but be very careful so you do not rip your outfit out, okay? And then after doing that, next thing is to open everything inside out, repeat the same thing for the other side, and then iron. And then we'll take it to our fabric so that we can attach it to the neck. Looking good already. So you can see it's ironed. That's the folded part inward. So you bring out your outfit. Let's attach it. And then the neckline area. So you want to just make sure that that lays very flat. And then we'll start attaching it from the center back where we have that notch. And then you get out your collar, and that notch that you have on your collar, you place it with the notch on your the outer collar, okay, not the one that has the folded ½ inch. So please make sure you don't make that mistake. And then you pin it notch to notch, okay. So you pin the center back first. I like to pin it at the left and right side, and then after pinning, I take the edge of the collar, okay, that's the center front, and pin it to my center front on my outfit, okay. So when you pin the center back first, the next step is to pin the center front. Once you pin that, make sure it's pinned firmly in place, and then when you raise it up, you can see that the center front slash aligns with your collar. It's just a straight line there. And then when you're done with that, you can now pin all the rest inside, and then you repeat the same step for the other center fronts there. You pin and then you pin everything inside. Your collar should fit. If your collar is smaller than your outfit's neckline, then you did not measure correctly. So it must fit. Press it inside and make sure everything eases in, and then pin round. And then we take it to the sewing machine and we sew using ½ inch seam allowance from one center front all the way around to the other center front, okay. So now that we're done, you want to just quickly look around where you've sewn. It should be smooth all around. If you have any tiny bit of folding when you're ironing, that should smoothen it out. And by the time you're done attaching the full collar and the collar falls backwards, it wouldn't even show. So next thing we want to do is attach the remaining part of the collar, the top collar. Okay, and for this you want to lay this flat on your table, and then you see that your seam allowances, it should be tucked inside, like sandwiched in the middle. And then you take your folded part to just a bit below your seam lines, and then you pin it. Okay, and we'll be sewing at that edge. Okay, like edge stitching on it. So you pin it and you just keep pinning from one center front all the way till you get to the other center front. So make sure this lays flat. You don't want your collar to have any form of wrinkling or folding. Okay, and as you do this, just keep looking at your seam line, and then make sure that as you pin, it's just a little bit below that seam line that you have there. When we're done pinning all the way to the end, we take it to the sewing machine and sew at the very edge of it. Once you're done sewing, once again iron, and we're almost done. So now we're done. This is how it looks. Really nice. You can see the seams at the edge. Okay, all the way to the other center front. And then of course you want to have this ironed, and that's the look. So the next thing now for us is to get our armhole area and then join the sides, attach our cuff. So I'm going to fold the sides together equally. Okay, and you can see how I'm doing it. After folding, I'll bring the other pair, the other side, and then place on top of it, so that when we're cutting out the sleeve area, it's everywhere we're cutting. Okay, so fold yours equally, make sure that they match, and then that cuff figure that you measured when you're taking your measurement, multiply it by 1.5, and whatever figure you have, measure from your shoulder all the way downwards, and add ½ inch to that figure, and then you mark. Okay, so that's just to give us the sleeve mark. We'll be creating gathered stitches there shortly. You can also attach elastic in the future if you prefer. So now from the hem, we'll be measuring 1 inch and then marking all the way up to that sleeve mark we have there. And when you get to that sleeve mark above, you want to just draw a slight curve. Okay, and then you cut that part out. This is to help us when we're attaching our curl, so that we don't have issues. So you just after marking, cut out that part, and then take out one side of your outfit, open up the sleeve area so that you have the front and back of one side. Okay, and then what you want to do is to go to your sewing machine and sew basting stitches. That's loose stitches all through from the beginning part of the sleeve to the end part. You sew two seams. Okay, some people do 3, but 2 is okay. Make sure that you loosen your tension and you increase your stitch length when doing this. So let's have that sewn twice so that we can draw our gathers and then insert our cuff. And then now to draw the gathers, you want to make sure that both front and back, okay, each of them has an equal size. So for example, if your cuff is 9 inches when you measured on your body, you want to have 4.5 inches plus ½ inch on each side okay, using your shoulder seam as a guide. So after you're done drawing your gathers, keep measuring and ensuring that each side has an equal length of your curve, okay, half of your curve plus half inch, because we'll be sewing, joining them to sew together. So let's have this gathered properly. And then after gathering, you want to take it to, and you're done measuring and everything is, equal, you want to take it to the sewing machine and adjust your tension and your stitch length to normal, and then sew on it so that you keep the gathered seams in place, okay, it doesn't continue to wobble. So after gathering, sew it on your sewing machine using your normal stitch length to keep it in place, and then repeat the same thing for the other sleeve. So now this is how it looks. You can see it doesn't bulge any longer. So you want to get out your fabric, whether you're using the same fabric or a different fabric. Let's cut out our cuff. Okay, so the width of the cuff, I'm going to be using 2 inches. If you want yours to be more, that's totally fine. And remember, it's going to be on fold, so whatever width you decide to have as your cuff, multiply it by 2 and then add 1 inch to that figure. 1 inch is because you'll be using half inch on each side. Okay, so I have my fabric here ironed and folded already because I want to cut out 2 cuffs, one for this side and the other side. So I'm just going to measure my cuff once again and then measure that on my fabric. So I'm just going to rule a straight line because the edges are not straight, and then I think I'm using 5 inches as the width. So I'm measuring the length of the cuff, okay, so that it just fits nicely when I attach it to the fabric. And then you want to measure the width as well, and then you cut out, so you'll be having 2 pieces. Now there are 2 different ways you can attach it. You can fold it like this and just simply place it on top, attach and sew, or you can fold each edge half an inch, which is what I prefer to give it a finished look. So we're going to be folding half an inch on the top and the bottom, and then iron, and then we'll come back to place it on the cuff. So this is how it looks, half inch folded on both sides and then pressed together. Okay, so now we're going to be sandwiching this, okay, to our sleeve. So the ruffles will be in between the cuff, and then you just want to make sure that your half inch is duly placed in between, and then you pin, and then we'll be sewing at the edge. So take your time and pin this from one edge to the other. Ensure that you keep looking at your sleeve to be sure that you have the exact half inch inwards, so that it doesn't slide out or go beyond that half an inch. So pin all the way down and then sew at the edge. When you're sewing, you should capture both this side and then the other side. Okay, so let's have that done. Looking pretty nice, all sewn. You can see how it looks firmly attached. So the next step now is for us to join the sides together. So you're going to take one side and place it equally, okay, to meet the other side, making sure that the hem, they match and they're placed well. And then you pin, and then you sew from the sleeve all the way down to the hem using half inch seam. Okay, so let's have that done. So we're done sewing it. Looks really good, okay, from the cuff downwards to the hem. So next is for us to clip that curve area just underneath your cuff. It makes it, lay really flat whenever you're wearing it or when you iron it. So just clip it about 2 to 3 places underneath your cuff area, just that curved area, okay? Clip it. Make sure you do not clip it beyond your seam, and then that's it. Repeat the same step for the other cuff, and then you just turn that inside out, iron, and then the next step now will be for us to fold our hem. Now remember that the hem we left half inch seam allowance or 1 inch, I can't even remember, but whatever seam allowance you left, you want to fold that inwards twice if you don't have a serger, and then iron, and then you'll be sewing at the edge all around. Once you're done with that, your outfit is ready. Okay, So you just iron everywhere once again, and then you try it on. And don't forget to share your lovely pictures with me when you're done. You can send them through Instagram or via email. I'd love to see your outfit when you're done. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not yet part of the family. Please like my video, it helps the algorithm, and share to your fashionista friends as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.